Hello. I'm trying to get the music going. How's everyone doing tonight? Hello, how are you guys? All right, let me move this over here so I can read it better. All right, so this is from an article that's called 11 of the Scariest Stories from Reddit. It's on the travelchannel.com. And we'll start from there. It wasn't a little girl. I was camping with my husband and his family at a small remote lake in New Mexico. There were about 10 people in our group and another group of 6 people in the next campsite. It was a nightmare, and both groups were doing typical activities, making s'mores, having a few drinks, and telling stories, when we heard all what sounded like a little girl yelling out for help. Neither group had children with them, but we were all positive we were hearing a little girl and decided to search the area, and we heard the noises together. There was a field behind our campsites, and we all saw a very tall, pure white figure standing maybe 100 feet away from us in the field, making the noises. We all agreed this thing looked like maybe 6 feet tall, skinny, and as white as it can be. We made our way closer to investigate, but whatever it was that we saw started backing off as we got closer, and it disappeared into the trees. All night, we continued to hear a little girl calling for help as we tried to sleep. Ugh, no thank you. Oh, hi, Ladam. My fondest memory was building sand castles with my father. That was until my mom took the urn away. Oh my goodness. Are you saying that you made sand castles out of what I think you're saying? Pretty sure that is water, yeah. Okay, this one's called The Walking Dead. I'm a psychiatric nurse, and early in my career, I worked at a residential mental health facility. One of our residents was an elective mute, which means that he wouldn't, and couldn't talk, but there were no medical reasons as to why. He had spoken earlier in his life, and in fact seemed quite normal back then, with the exception of being close to 7 feet tall. He'd been raised in the Deep South and joined the military when he was 19 years old, but one night he vanished. He was declared AWOL, and eventually he was declared missing and then dead. 10 years later, a 7-foot tall man walked into a VA hospital emergency room in part of the Midwest and said to the receptionist, "My name is Marin Duchesne," quote, not his real name, "and I've been dead for 10 years. They were the last words he ever spoke. He was covered with dust and was wearing the same clothes he'd been reported to have been wearing the night he vanished. His social security number had not been used, and he had no identification on his person. However, they were able to still identify him, I guess via fingerprints. The family was notified, but they said that they had already grieved their lost man, and that whoever was claiming to be him simply could not be this person. They demanded not to be contacted again. Marin paced all day, every day, moving his mouth that looked like talking or muttering, but no sound came out. He had an unnerving habit of throwing his head back with his mouth wide open as if he were laughing heartily. But not even a breath could be heard. If I talked to him, he appeared to listen, periodically throwing his head back in this laughter-mimicking way. Various medications were tried, but they did not affect him either positively or negatively. Occupational therapy did not did nothing because Marion was just grin, and unless told to stay put, he would get up and start pacing again. On my last day at the job, the last thing I saw was Marion pacing in the parking lot, throwing his head back to laugh. Later, I wondered if all along I'd been dealing with a ghost. All these years later, and I still don't know. Oh, hey, Dominican John. I'm a night owl. I can't, no. So, this is called the Unrest Stop. I was driving across the country with my mom and sister when I was 16, and my sister was 20. It was late, but we were all rested and still alert. We were driving along an interstate and needed gas and a bathroom break, so we stopped as the only rest stop was there within 200 miles. There was a van full of teenagers and a road trip at the gas station, as well as a small gray car pumped at the pump in front of us, with two young men standing still and outside of it. When we got there, everything felt wrong. We had been on the road for days and seen many rest stops at night and had never been afraid until then. My mom and sister went inside and I stayed inside the car. I heard the teenagers say that they were creeped out and couldn't get the pump to work, and they all left in a hurry. I was watching the car in front of us, and the two men had not moved at all. Not an inch. They weren't even talking. They were on their phones, and they were just standing there, still as stone. My sister and mom came running back out of the car, and when they got in, the two men slowly turned to look at us while not moving or pivoting the rest of their bodies. And I swear to fucking shit, we all saw the same thing. They had dark eyes as pitch and empty. Truly empty. Not black, not reflecting any light at all, just this void. We sped up there and out and didn't stop until we were in the next city. The worst thing about the entire experience was that we couldn't find this place on any map. We knew exactly which spot on the interstate to look, and we couldn't find it on Google. We didn't even find it on a paper map we had. We even asked locals about the creepy gas station out in the straight road and got only confused looks. We traveled on the interstate since and there is no rest stop. Reading scary stories. It came for us in the graveyard. We were driving my family's really old beat-up Subaru through a massive graveyard. We stopped and walked down a hill and came across a little pond. There was someone sitting on a rock on the other side of the pond. The figure was all black, and we couldn't make out any features other than the fact that it looked like a man who was wearing some old-style top hat. We stupidly waved and shouted, "Hi!" He didn't show any acknowledgement and continued sitting on that rock. All of a sudden, he jumped to his feet, started running at us on the water, and then vanished in thin air about halfway on the pond. My friends and I screamed and ran back to the car. The car wouldn't start, and we heard something banging on the back of the car. And it wasn't a constant bang, but every few seconds or so, we would hear it. Nobody was outside from what we could see in the dark, but something was making a noise on the car. I opened my phone and started dialing my mom to come get us a boost. But I had no service. None of us had any cell service. The next 30 minutes we spent trying to get the car started. No banging was heard afterwards, but we felt this very heavy pressure around us. Finally, the car started and she hit the pedal to the metal. We sped out of the graveyard so fast, immediately crossing the gates. All of our phones all of a sudden regained cell service. One thing I know for certain is that someone or something was out there, and it was not an animal or a human. Just got off the night shift, still wide awake and glad. Oh, thanks. And just for everyone too that's on here, I do post my lives on YouTube. So if you ever want to hear me read these live stories, they're being posted on my YouTube right now. So, hey, you know what? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Hi, Riley. Okay. Let me just get this. So it was good to see an old friend. That's what this one is called. When I was 37, I went to my high school reunion. I flew into the nearest airport and rented a car. The distance was about like 35 miles through a very rural and almost abandoned part of the country. So about 3 miles outside of town, I see someone on the side of the road flagging me down. It turned out that it was one of the guys I had attended school with. Jim, that's not his real name, gets in the car and we start talking. I had not seen him in 20 years, but he still looked the same. Maybe a little older, and we get to town and I ask him if he wants to come to the VFW and have a drink with me. He says no, just take me home. So Jim's parents had lived only a few blocks from my grandmother's house, and I turned into that direction. But he said to take him to the outskirts of town. There was a mobile home park out there, and I figured that that is where he lived. When we reached the end of the turn, he said, just drop me off here. It was good to see you again, and he walks off into the site. Now, I go to the VFW, meet some old friends, old classmates, and we start to talk. As we're talking about who is coming to the reunion, I mentioned that I had just picked up Jim 3 miles away. So then I dropped him off in the east part of town. Everyone gets extremely quiet. Even the guy singing karaoke stops and lays down the mic. My cousin goes white as a t-shirt and says, Barb, Jim died on the curve 8 years ago, rolled his car, and we were all just at his funeral. I was told this and I started to feel really dizzy. I went out to the car to take a step and some really deep breaths. There on the seat is a local newspaper printed 8 years previous containing Jim's obituary, and I still have the paper. And I think the user was Fincher Square. So I think I've read these before, but I'm sure people are probably hearing these for the first time. Oh, thank you. Oh, hey, you know what? Animals are really good at sensing things. So you know what? If your dog's fine, you should be fine too. And I actually believe that like animals bring really good energy and ward off anything. Reminds me of Resurrection Mary. I haven't seen that, so I don't know what that is. Is it like a movie? Thank you, Derek. Thank you so much. So this one is called Death Came for Him. So I was standing in my parents' room talking to my very sick dad at the time. He was dying of stage 4 cancer. I got the feeling something was behind me. I looked towards the doorway to the living room, and something about 4'6", fully black, is peeking around the corner with its hands on the doorframe, and I ran towards it, and it slipped back around the door. When I go outside the doorway, there was nothing. My dad was completely confused when I stepped back inside the room, and when I tell him, people who stayed at my house in my dad's final days claimed to have seen it. My mom saw the figure on multiple occasions and in multiple places until he passed away. And since then, we haven't seen it. I don't know what possesses me to binge Reddit these things, but yeah, we're all good. So that's implying that that was after him. Oh, you guys are too nice. So Vexing Thought says, no, not a movie, but it's a girl that died on hitchhikes. Has you drop her. Oh, wow. Okay. Creepy. Oh my God. I need a drink of water now. And also I have my cat here because I'm sure some of you that have been on my lives before, I will start to jump reading scary stories and I think I see things. So, you know, at least I can make the excuse that when that happens, it's my cat this time. Yes, so I actually have been on the CW's Halloween special. I was the psychic medium, so that's what I do outside of social media, and so I was on that. It's called Mysteries Decoded presents Spirit Squad. I'm going to be on season 3 of Mysteries Decoded as well, where we've gone to one haunted location. I'm going to be flying out next month at another location. So yeah, I'll have more stuff to share later this year. Remember like the hype of zombies? Yes, I love Mr. Ballin. Mr. Ballin followed me when I had like less than 7,000 followers. And he's like the sweetest person ever. He told me to keep going and doing what I was doing. And yeah, I think that was a huge inspiration for me at the time. Okay. hopefully I get to meet him one day, because I think without, like, he was a huge part of, like, the motivation. Have had bad experiences with spirits. I think I made a quick story and I mentioned it a few times, so I'm sorry for those who have heard the story. But the Myrtles Plantation was not a fun experience for me. That was like, it's a haunted place in Louisiana, and I don't know, I had a panic attack. I thought I saw like something hanging from a tree, and it is a haunted place. So yes, Myrtles Plantation is up there. Okay. This one is called Evicted by a Ghost. Shortly after college, I had gotten married. We immediately moved into a basement apartment because that's all that was available within our budget. This place had a poltergeist, and my wife was incredibly terrified. Whatever resided there made it clear that it wanted to live alone. Dishes, glasses, and other items would fly off the shelf. My wife was hit several times, and there was always this ominous feeling that we were being watched. At night, when we walked through the apartment in the dark, there would be this insanely bright flashes of light that would illuminate the entire room. One night, while we were going to bed, as soon as my wife and I walked into the bedroom, we heard a voice from nowhere say my name and telling me to move. My wife looked at me, and I looked at her, and I said loudly, "You got it, bud." We moved out 2 days later and stayed with family. The old lady who owned the place died a few months later, and the house was torn down. It is still empty to this day. Nothing but grass and a tree. I still drive by it every now and then. Thank you. Yeah, I think, so if you guys like this stuff, the one that really got to me, and it wasn't told as like a scary story, but it did give me like goosebumps. So there was like a lawyer on TikTok. He basically had stitched a video, I believe, of this couple that stayed at an Airbnb. And the Airbnb, was it in Louisiana? I think it was also in Louisiana. But basically, but don't quote me on that, I could be wrong. They stayed in this like small little like what looked like a shack, and apparently like that used to be like a shack that was like a historical thing that people would place slaves in when slavery was a thing. They would place like a bunch of slaves, and like I guess this couple didn't know that, and they were feeling very uncomfortable, uneasy feelings. And like this lawyer like stitched, and he's like, well, yeah, this was used to like house slaves. Like I can't imagine, why is this being used as an Airbnb? And then like it became this uproar on social media. I have a couple of bad spirits. Can't touch. I do have Bigfoot stories. I've told a few of them, but maybe I can look some up. Maybe like we could do like a cryptid thread. I haven't done that yet, so thank you for that. We've done a few UFOs though. Okay. If I can find it, but I don't want to. I'll get to that here in a second. So this one's called the Death March. My dad used to work as a corrections officer at a rural prison. He drove the perimeter of the property for his entire shift, where he would check empty buildings for runaway inmates. It was generally a boring job. One night, my dad was parked on a hill reading a magazine when he started to feel a thumping in his body. He described it as feeling what you get when speakers are playing a song with really heavy bass. He put the magazine down and checked his rearview mirror, where he saw someone outside the truck. He grabbed his pistol and jumped out of the truck with his weapon drawn. Outside of the truck, he realized it was a procession of Native Americans walking through the truck and directly through his seat, only to disappear at the exact spot he was sitting. He said it was clear, and there were ghosts because many of them appeared injured. This went on for a few seconds, and then the whole procession disappeared. He called the other parameter guy on the walkie to try to explain, and the other guy almost immediately stopped communicating. Turns out the other guy had seen this happen before but didn't believe in ghosts, so he wouldn't talk about it. Oh no, the skinwalker stuff, man. That stuff scares me. Derek King says, there was a murder in my house a couple years ago before I moved into it, and now there's weird things. Yeah, I don't know, man. Okay, so I genuinely believe like tragic events and anything like that does hold energy. Like, especially like if they're in a place, right? Let me go back to the ghost Reddit thread. Gosh, sorry guys, give me 1 second. Okay, cool. I think I found another Reddit. So this is from the Ghost Stories Reddit thread, and the question is true paranormal or just scary stories. Now, this one is from Miserable Skyler. He says, when I was around 15 years old, my family and I moved into a 3-bedroom house. My older sister chose the bigger bedroom, and I didn't really care much for it at the time. I got the smaller room down the hallway, which kind of looked creepy since there was a window right at the end of the hallway and my bedroom would be on the side or where the window was. So when you go to the room on your right, you see a small window on the wall next to it, and that's where the hallway ends. As I was getting my stuff in my bedroom, into the bedroom, I saw something odd, which looked like a nail, which was on the window still. I ignored it and just went back into my inner room. But little did I know, this house was previously owned by a crazy old woman who had died in the house. My parents told me this after things started to get really worse. So anyway, as I was unpacking everything and stored my stuff, I felt this cold breeze. Mind you, it was a freaking summer and it was very hot at the time. So out of the corner of my eye, I see a black figure unmoving right where the window was. I was 6 to 7 feet away from it because I was in my room. Now, during this time, I froze and I felt like tingles down my spine. I quickly ran downstairs to my parents and didn't have the words to explain what had just occurred. After calming down for a little bit, I told them about the black figure, and my father went upstairs to check up on what I said. Then he said, "You're not a child anymore, Sky." I felt hurt because he thought I was playing around with him. But then he checked everywhere, my room and window, but there was nothing. A few hours went by and we were all eating dinner, and my sister was in this terrible mood and texting her friends at the table, which is what she always used to do. Now, I was a talkative one whenever it was time to eat dinner with my family, but in reality, I'm actually a very introverted girl. So I was asking how Dad's day went. He works as a construction worker, and he said it was okay. Suddenly, we heard a loud thumping coming from upstairs. And you can kind of see in the hallway that there was, you can see from the hallway because there's the stairs that led up to it, and downstairs is where the dining area was next to the kitchen. So my dad asked, "What was that?" in a very concerned tone. He got up from the dining table and grabbed his old bat that he always kept in the kitchen, so in case we were ever in danger. He slowly made his way upstairs and heard more sounds. Thump, thump, thump. It got louder, and I was scared as shit. He then gets to the final step and went to stand in front of my room. He also looked to the side where the window was outside in the hallway, but no one was there. But sounds came mostly from my room. He tried opening the door, but it was locked. I mean, how could it be? I never locked it, and there's no key to lock it or anything like that. Anyway, so it was an old doorknob. My dad began to push all his body against the door and finally opened so hard he nearly fell over. I wanted to just see what was all the commotion and ran upstairs so fast to see if he was okay. My dad told me he was fine and the door was unstuck. As he was talking to me in my room, I just felt like looking into the window, and what I saw was dreadful. It was a dark figure standing, but outside looking through the window directly at me, and I screamed so loud that the neighbors could hear it. My dad rushed to me and didn't see anything. I told him something was there, but he just couldn't see it, and then the figure vanished. Now, no one believes me until this day, but I'm glad we finally and eventually moved out of this creepy house. Oh, thank you, Vaccine Thoughts. Thank you so much. Sorry, did I miss something? There was a murder. Oh, sorry, I'm just catching up, guys. So if you ever have a spirit that's haunting you, you realize that and I know it's hard sometimes because like when you are scared something won't leave you alone, it does feel like you are kind of powerless, but remember you do have power. You can tell it to go away and leave you alone. If the music is too loud, let me know. Yes, so the Snow White drawing, I got it at Season Screamings in California. Strange, me and my wife get emotionally charged out of nowhere in the middle of the night. That is interesting. Black-eyed kids. I did actually, that's like one of the first videos I ever went viral for was like, I didn't even know I was telling a black-eyed kid story. I would love to do that. Maybe what I would love to do is set up like a voice messaging system where people can call me and leave me voice messages and we could play that. Like I would love something like that. Okay, let me get to the next story. Okay, here's another one. Let me just drink some water. So yeah, if I set up a voicemail, like a voice messaging system, would people like call it? I know I have an email, but I don't really like advertise it as much, but people have written to me on there too. I have seen a ghost. Well, more like shadow people. No, you're not. You're not gonna have sleep paralysis nights. No, you're not. Get some chamomile lavender tea or something. You'll be fine. So the time that I saw a shadow person was at the Myrtles plantation. So sorry for people that might have heard the story before. So my husband and I had gone to New Orleans and then we drove to Baton Rouge to see the Myrtles plantation. Apparently there's like this haunted mirror that people get to see. And if you ever go to the Myrtles plantation, you cannot take photos during the tour, just so you know. I don't know if they've changed it since then, but you can't take a bunch of pictures or anything like that. Otherwise, I wish I could. But we were doing the tour, and in the room where they would like host seances and all this stuff, we would... Are you gonna buy me chapstick then, Brutal? But anyway, so I went there and there was like a fireplace and a mirror, and like the tour guide was standing, like his back was facing the mirror, and I was just like feeling so anxious. Hi, Austin. Oh my gosh. Hi. So I remember that like a shadow got up from like the crowd of people and like walked away. It was like the weirdest, like I felt like so scared, but yeah, that was like the scariest like shadow person experience I had. My neighborhood had a ghost in the woods and we called Red Man. The multiple kids saw through the... What? Wait, what? What is that? And if you ever want to share like anything, my email is in my bio, so feel free to like email me, you can message me, whatever's easy for you guys. No pressure. Okay. Cool. So I'll read this one. This one is from KBbella 77. So I have had paranormal experiences since I was very young, and this one is really creepy. So my husband and my 2-year-old daughter had moved into a semi-new apartment complex. I was at a stay-at-home mom, and I first noticed that the lights flickered in the hallway and the TV would turn off on and on its own. I first noticed that the lights were... Oops, sorry. I always felt so uneasy being alone in the apartment, and it felt dark, although it had lots of windows and there was plenty of light during the daytime. Yes, you can email me for sure. Yes, please do. Please email me. Okay. One very early morning at the break of dawn, I heard a jingling of like the jingling from the tag of like a pet collar. Something jumped on the bed and it did circles on my comforter and lay down between my legs. Now, I grew up with a dog sleeping with me and thought that the dog is asleep now. But wait a minute, we don't have a dog. I bolted up, nothing was there, and I thought it was a dream. Now, I decided to switch bedrooms with our daughter as she had the larger one. So one night in the other bedroom, I was sleeping early in the morning again, and the covers kept being tugged on, like as if they were coming off. So I'm always cold and a light sleeper, and I finally woke up and the covers were moving on their own. My husband woke up and saw it too. They were being pulled down right off of us, and I didn't go back to sleep until like the morning, basically. So a couple of weeks later went by, and I had a dream that someone said, "Do you want to see a ghost?" And I said, "Sure," and got out of bed and walked into the living room dining area. So I looked to the right and noticed our apartment was filled with old antique furniture and was decorated with someone else's things. Confused, I turned my head to the left and I see the dining area and saw an old gray woman crouched over with what appeared to be a desk. Now we had a dining table set up there, but she turned her head and glared angrily at me. And that scared the shit out of me. So then I woke up. Now, I was rattled for days. Now, a month later, we were sitting outside talking to the upstairs neighbors, a mother and a daughter. She went on to say that the former tenant in our apartment was an elderly woman who was a piano teacher. Now, they made her stop having students to the apartment because of the traffic in the parking lot taking up all these spaces and the noise from the piano. Now, she also said that she was extremely an angry old woman and that she had died in that apartment. I froze and said, "Wait, did she have a little dog too?" And the neighbor said, yes, she did. Now, with a puzzled look on her face, she says, "Wait a minute, but how did you know that?" I didn't even go into my experiences because I don't believe anyone would believe you, and most people do. They just write you off. Anyway, I also experienced sleep paralysis and so on. But now I know that the apartment is haunted. So we were only there for a year and moved and never saw that woman again. Oh my God, that deserves an upvote. That is scary. I don't know about that, man. See, it's stuff like that. And I've actually have heard other people in real life tell me their experience about how could you possibly ever know that? How could you possibly know pieces and details of things like that? I don't know. Stuff like that just gives me the heebie-jeebies. All right, so this one is another one. It's from soulshot_. Now, when I was in middle school, I would spend a lot of time at the rectory. Sorry, I can't talk today. The rectory of my Catholic school during the summer. I was too old for daycare and too young to be left alone at home. So my mom was an administrator there and would sometimes give us the keys to the empty school for my brothers and I. So we would play manhunt with our friends. We were very mischievous and would sometimes snoop around places we weren't allowed to, specifically the 4th floor, which you need keys to access. You can also do it through the elevator or the emergency exit. Now, it used to be a convent back in the day where it had nuns, and the nuns were living there. A long, dark history corridor is lined up with the rooms that used to be there where they slept. In the middle was a chapel, and there was a priest who would hold mass for them. The main church for the public was downstairs, attached to the building. Now, this chapel was not in use at the time, but over the years, the school would occasionally hold art and music lessons there. It is the only reason I'm very familiar with it. So anyway, our little gang had a lot of rooms and things to explore, and it was early afternoon, so the sun was beaming through the windows. So finally my friend sighs. Oh, whoa, this is all distorted. So let me give me 1 second and see if this undistorts it. Oh, it doesn't. All right, well, we're gonna keep going. Oh, here we go. So, okay, I was the youngest of the group, maybe 11 or so, and was kind of the odd one out. Some were coupled up and what the heck is going? This is so distorted. I'm gonna have to skip this story. I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna skip that. Well, I'll try to finish the last 3 paragraphs. Anyway, so my friend finally sighs and walks back to the corridor, and my heart was pounding because I knew my mom was gonna be so pissed that we were in there. I find my brother and we gather everyone to hightail it and get the hell out of there. My brother asked me where the guy went, and it was then I realized I didn't hear any doors close or open. Not only that, but I heard footsteps. We looked around, kind of scratching our heads, and headed back to the rectory where my mom was having lunch at her desk. When I handed her the keys, I didn't waste any time coming clean about the 4th floor. I explained that I had met the new priest, and she looked very confused, genuinely concerned. there was no priest visiting. I told her about the people upstairs and asked her what he was looking for. I could have known the word and she knew it. She immediately got on the phone with the custodian who lived nearby and asked him to do a sweep of the school and church. They were concerned that someone had broken into the school, but they never found anyone there. Later that evening, I overheard my parents talking about this incident, and I heard my dad ask my mom if she thinks it might be the ghost of that priest who killed himself in the 60s. I later found out that my brothers also stole a couple of the albs from a closet in the chapel, and they believed that it might have belonged to that priest. Oh my gosh. I wish it wasn't distorted. What the heck? Whoa. Yeah, okay, can we email you and read? Yes, you can. Vaccine thoughts. My friend said his house is haunted by someone who's unalive. I'm so sorry to hear that. Oh my God. No, that's scary. I mean, it's not scary, but it's just like very tragic, you know, when just like trapped spirits or unrested spirits are there. Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay. So this one is from Dark Witch 1306. This happened in May of 2022. My husband and I were in St. Augustine, Florida, and when I walked in, I almost turned around and walked out. I didn't want to be there. I told my husband that I was going to try to go through, but I wasn't sure if I was able to. It felt like the worst kind of depression, like everything was coming down in my head. The hair was standing up in my arms, and I just didn't feel safe. I go in. This happened as we walked through the first half of the building. I kept looking behind me, and something was definitely there. It got a little better as we got closer to the back. As I went into the lobby, coming out, I told the lady that they needed to sage or have someone bless this museum. She looked at me and said that there were 3 spirits there, a woman and a man and another woman who wears a green Victorian dress. I told her that it was worse at the front of the building, and she told me that that's the part of the cemetery. It was under the first part of the building, so I guess they had built over it. She said that since then they are redoing parts of it and the spirits have calmed down. I told her that the spirits are really sad, so sad, that's how it seemed, and I felt like I had to tell her that. We were looking at some of the pictures I had taken when we got back to the hotel, and all the pictures I took from the first part of the tour were blank, every single one of them. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Midnight. So like, okay, this gave me chills because, so here are a couple of things that I kind of came to mind when I was reading the story. So I went to go do like out here in Santa Clarita in California, they were doing like a PJ paranormal thing. And there was like this investigator, he was like a paranormal investigator. He's been doing it for like over a decade. And he was talking about like whenever you feel like this deep depression just out of nowhere, like he believes, because he had an experience of like a demon attack. Now, I don't really like to throw around that word that often, if I'm being honest. Like I don't really like call anything, like everything demons. Like I'm very just like hesitant for that. But he was explaining that like at one point, he all of a sudden got like a big like episode of like depression, like the worst depression. And he was talking about like how the reason why people fear demons, of course, there's like this stigma, right? But also like very low vibrations will feed off like depression, like all these like negative energy. And long story short, like he had to do like a bunch of cleansings and like literally like it took him a very long time to fight it. And I think it had to do with like a place that he went to, if I'm not mistaken. Have you heard of the Haunted Doll Island? Yes, I have. Yes, I think I would love to visit that. Like part of me would be scared, but I would love to go. Yes, the Polaroid. Yeah. So that kind of came to mind. The second thing is, so I lived in Colorado for like the last 10 years. In Denver, Colorado, there's this place called Cheeseman Park. Cheeseman Park is next to like the Botanical Gardens of Denver. And that park, they basically like put a park over it. Like it used to be like a cemetery and they just put a park over it. So there's like, that's a very common thing throughout the United States. Unsolved Mysteries did this whole thing on like how they built a bunch of houses over like a cemetery site. Like this woman, didn't know that it used to be like the cemetery site, and they were experiencing like hauntings and stuff. And yeah, it was gnarly that they just like did not know that until they did like a deep dive of like what is going on this property. So yeah, fun fact, very tragic. A lot of places throughout the United States, they just decide to put a cemetery over it. Or things over cemeteries. Okay. So this one is called Petite Asian Bay. And let me get some water before I read this one. In Ventura, California. Ventura, California, they made a park on top of, oh my God. Yeah, see, like, it's so, like, what the heck is up with these people that do that? Like, I understand with, like, demand of, like, building houses and everything, but, like, at the cost of building over cemeteries, the heck? Just, I don't know. Really weird. Really weird. Yeah, okay. So this one is called I Grew Up Seeing and Feeling Paranormal Stuff, but I have a few. So when I was 14, my family moved into our new house, which is a 3-story house. The ground floor was the parking lot, empty, and had storage space. The first floor was the living room, dining room, and it had 2 kitchens, dry and wet, separated with a bathroom. And on the top floor, it was all the bedrooms. So we didn't hire anyone to bless or do anything religious, because we all have different faiths. So my brother and I are non-practicing Christians, and our parents are Buddhists. So one of the bedrooms faced the top of the stairs, and there's a wardrobe there with a sliding reflective glass. It was really creepy. So I wouldn't look at the wardrobe while I bolted back to my room. I always felt like there was something sinister in this house. I was around 16 or 17 when I felt the most paranormal activity in this house. Anyway, so like I said, I was 16 and 17. I was being bullied a lot in school and fell into this very deep depression, and that was really untreated. And this is also a trigger warning for people. I felt suicidal a lot of the time. I was bullied at school, and this was taboo to have mental health issues in Asia. So one night there was like these stray dogs roaming our neighborhood, where at least some were beautiful, expensive dogs. I was curious, so went to have a look by the first floor balcony, while suddenly one of the dogs turned around and just glared at me. Mind you, this was not in a slow motion, but the dog literally snapped and turned to glare at me, while it growled as if I was something evil to it. So I was obviously spooked, and I hid behind the curtains, and the scary dog would just stare at me from the street below. Another time, I was making hot cocoa in the dry kitchen at night, and my back was facing the stair walkway. Suddenly, I felt someone walk past me, like really quickly. My brother loved to shower in the kitchen guest room due to the water pressure, so I thought that was him. So the next morning, I asked if he was there, and he said no. I asked my mom, and she also said no, which was really strange because I felt a gust of wind as if someone was like walking past me at home in the kitchen. So anyway, that spooked me, but it might have been something else, which I mentioned. The home felt really sinister. Okay, this was the scariest thing that happened to me in this house too. As a teenager, we all loved to go to bed late, so the teenage me stayed up. I put down my phone at like 2:44 a.m. and I remember this was clear as day because this is like that scary. So I fell asleep and I woke up suddenly with a jolt. I sat up and saw that my bed was literally shaking. I looked around and thought it was an earthquake, but nope, just my bed. I looked at my water bottle, my desk, and everything, and like there's no movement with anything around me, just my bed. Terrified, I quickly laid back down and covered myself with my blanket and duvet while I was praying to God. So what felt like ages later, it was probably just a few minutes, it stopped. I quickly looked at my phone and the time was 3:05. Again, I asked my family if anyone felt an earthquake the next morning, but they all looked at me very puzzled. I honestly think they thought I was being crazy, but that was one of the scariest things I ever experienced in this house. I know 3 o'clock is like the devil's witching hour, and this happened at that time. I felt the most At this time, I felt most faithless and broken, so there is definitely something there in my house, and I felt very broken as well. My dad went on a business trip to Turkey and bought some of the religious tokens, which were like an eye, like those evil eye. And they also said, sorry, I don't know what it's called. Evil eye, that's what it's called. He said that it was to hang them in my living room to protect us from anything evil. Well, that token broke a couple of years later. It just fell and broke. And that's the end of the story. Okay, so about that, I will say it's interesting because, like, I don't mind going to, like, haunted locations, or anything like that, but I do believe that, like, for me, and I think this goes to for a lot of people, correct me if I'm wrong, I think for a lot of us, when it feels like I feel like going to bed is a very vulnerable moment for most of us, because, like, we're literally getting ready to go to bed. It's, like, supposed to be, like, a safe place, and to just wake up to the feeling of your bed just shaking. I think, are you talking about these? Yeah, you just like to feel like the bed is shaking. I cannot imagine, if I'm being completely honest. I don't know. I think for me, my advice for people that feel like anything is being physical or anything like that, like, get a professional to come cleanse your house. I feel like a lot of places have, like, local community, like, shops where, like, they may sell, like, candles or, like, do readings or anything like basically those are called occult shops. But yeah, see, it also depends if you're a light sleeper, right? All right, so all right, this one's called From Monkeypox. A couple of years ago, I was driving down the back roads at night to clear my mind when I decided to drive up towards an area that overlooks my hometown. This was towards the end of summer, and the California wildfires were raging and getting close to the town right next to where I live. I decided to pull over on the dark, two-lane back road to get the view of the wildfire that was burning all night and creeping up on the town. I sat in my car and rolled down the window to be able to see the fires. I sat there for about, like, 5 minutes. There was no music or anything playing. I was just watching the fires burn. And either side of me were just pitch black fields. While I was sitting there, I hear a very distinct "hey" coming from the bushes. It was like the creepiest thing I had ever heard in my entire life. It was definitely not coming from a human. It sounded like it was coming from, like, an animal. I have no idea what it was, but I never sped off faster in my entire life. A couple months later, I was watching a documentary of a man who had an encounter with a skinwalker, and the story was almost the exact same as mine. He pulled over on a dark highway and heard the exact same noise coming from the bushes. Seeing the documentary gave me the biggest chills. Oh! No! That's another scary thing. Thank you. I love that. My indigenous looks. Thank you so much. I feel like a lot of people that look indigenous or are indigenous don't get enough love. So thank you for that. That ghost is gonna have me want to wake up. Did I find it? Well, okay, we got close. We got close to the skinwalker. That's a cryptid story. I would have to say that is in that we're getting closer. But I'll take a couple minutes for you to find one. Let me get on to just so we don't lose where we're at now in case we can't find it. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Oops, not this one. Give me 1 second. I think this one is it. Oh, this is a long one though. This is like 10 paragraphs. Okay. You're fine. Yeah, sleep paralysis scares the hell out of me. When I think I had just turned 20, I moved into like my first apartment on my own in Aurora. I was living in Aurora. So this is a creepy thing too. I don't know if you guys remember of like the Dark Knight shooting that happened. I lived, I think, less than a block away from that movie theater. Like a block or two away from that movie theater. And we used to go to that movie theater all the time. And luckily, like the year that it happened, I moved out of that area and moved like more towards like central Denver. And but that apartment, I would experience like sleep paralysis. I hate sleep paralysis. It's like the worst and like freakiest experience ever. Let's see if I can find a story on it. Those stories I rarely ever hear are ghost animals like dogs. Yeah, that's true. Welcome back, Riley. Yeah, the shooting, man, like that was so tragic. It really hit close to home because again, like I obviously feel bad that it happened in an area where I did not live far from, but also like a theater that I've been. Okay. Sorry, guys. Okay, I can't find it yet. I can't find it, but I'll keep looking after the next one. Okay. So this one is from Capri_Sun_1. I've had quite a few paranormal experiences. I was also able to see spirits when I was a kid, but the scariest experience I ever had when it was around the time that I was 8 or 9. So when I was 7, my family and I moved into this pretty old house. You wouldn't think anything of it if you lived in the house or go into the basement. No bad energy, and the house was in good condition. The only thing weird about the upstairs was the fact that there was this back door and then there was like nothing. So, okay, where was I? No deck, not even stairs. There was just a 1-story drop. There was a total of 6 bedrooms in the house, 3 rooms upstairs, and 3 in the basement. My sister and I had to sleep in the basement because my mom and my little brother all slept upstairs. My mom was also heavily pregnant, and the other room was going to be for the baby. So anyway, fast forward a year, my mom and her boyfriend were out and my grandparents were watching us. They had put us to bed, and probably like half an hour later, someone who appeared to be my grandma opened my door and asked something along the lines of me to follow her because we were going to get a treat. Now, I don't know why, but I pretended to be asleep. For my grandmother, who appeared to be my grandmother, waited about a minute before saying anything. I guess you don't get anything then, she says. Then she shuts the door and left. So then 3 seconds later, I jumped out of bed and went out to tell her that. I was awake and I wanted that treat. I opened the door and there was like no one there. I walked down the hallway and up the stairs, and there was my grandparents in my mom's room talking. I didn't get a good look to see what they were doing because I was so freaked out that I ran back to my room and I tried to go back to sleep. I still don't understand what happened. I know that story sounds fake, but I promise you it's 100% true. Interesting. So basically, they were trying to sleep. Someone who mimicked their grandmother was asking them to come follow them for a treat. Is it me? I don't know if anyone has seen this, these TikToks where like you don't respond back if there's like whistling or anybody that like is impersonating people that you know, right? Am I wrong? Has anyone seen those, right? I think there's like a side of TikTok. I mean, can people tag me if there's those videos? The weirdest thing about it is I had most nights in a row for months, but never told anyone. Wait, did I miss something? Yeah, sleep paralysis is no joke, man. I hate sleep paralysis. It is not fun. It is not fun at all. Let me go back to the whole... I think I did have... Well, actually, I don't have it on here. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I would do like a cleansing. I was about to like freak out. It was my cat. My cat's right here. I was like, what is that? Still looking for that. You heard, wait a minute. I heard a loud whistle coming from my living room like at 1:30 yesterday. No, thank you, man. Have you heard whistling before? Let me know. See, every time I look for it on like Reddit, it's just like a bunch of videos. Okay, I think I got one for you. There's a cryptid story. So when I was 10 years old, this happened, and it was really late at night. I saw a large bipedal creature go sprint into a cornfield next to a dairy barn in upstate New York. So all of a sudden, every animal in the barn started to lose it. Like, you could hear all these noises. It was like the loudest thing I've ever heard. Like, the cows would moo, like they were really scared to death. My mother called the farmer who owned the farm, and he went out to check it out. The next day, he found a wild turkey corpse with its neck snapped and half-eaten in the middle of the field. And you know what the creepiest part is? Is that he said he knew exactly what I was talking about and was installing in motion sensor lights to deter whatever it was. He never saw it again, but the farmer who lived there for 30 years and said he's seen and heard them at least once a year and refuses to tell anybody because he doesn't want to be labeled as a crazy person. Ugh. There you go. That is scary. Someone said it's the dog man. And then they followed up with, like, I'm not sure, it didn't look like a dog, but at the same time, it looked like a big ape. All I know for sure is that I get a weird feeling whenever I'm out there. And then he said, it has black fur, lanky arms, but it's not dragging to the floor. According to the farmer, it smells foul when they're nearby, and they make a howling noise, but I was not close enough to get a whiff of him. Hi, Caitlin. That actually scared the hell out of me when he was explaining, like, the lanky arms. That scared the hell out of me. Thank you. You scared me. Now that scared me. Oh God, no thanks. Okay, so then someone says again, going back to the dog man type, what makes you unsure? What they're bipedal but not canine? Are there claws on the hands? Any eye glows? What are the ears? So on. So they're asking for more descriptions. The original person who posted it said, I think the main reason I'm not so unsure is because it happened over 15 years ago. I didn't videotape it or anything like that, or try to take a photo. I would love to give you more data, but honestly, it was so long ago, I don't remember. I know that the ears were on the side because it had no indication of dog-like ears. Definitely did have eyes shine through it. Ah! The more we go into the description, the more scary it's getting me. So yesterday, user 289, yesterday we did read, a couple days ago, we were reading a story on a person who was asking that question. They basically were sleeping and they weren't sure if, like, it was astral projection, UFO abduction, or just something else. And I guess, like, their theory is that perhaps aliens or UFOs, because, you know, people, like, feel like they've been abducted. Their theory is that they believe that aliens are not physical, that they're, like, more of, like, a different, like, more of, like, an entity from a different, like, dimension or interdimension being. And if you think about it, the way that it described the smell of, like, aliens, like sulfuric smells, are also relied to, like, demonic entities. So that's an interesting one. What if aliens are us from a... See, like, I feel like we can go down the rabbit hole with this, you know? Do I believe in Bigfoot? I want to believe in Bigfoot. I genuinely want to believe in Bigfoot. I've had people that I respect and love tell me their paranormal, or sorry, not paranormal, their Bigfoot stories. So keep in mind, I've lived in Minnesota and my in-laws are from Alaska, which I think are two very common Bigfoot sighting places. Thank you, multidimensional. Thank you for that, multidimensional being. And like, okay, so I had a family, like an in-law, tell me that they feel like a Bigfoot was outside of their, like, cabin. So they used to visit this area, like, out in the, you know, a very, like, wooded rural area. And I guess, like, they call it out in the bush. That's like the terminology that they use in Alaska. I lived in Minnesota. We called it out in the country. And but we'll get to that story. So Alaska, they were out in the bush, and they had like a place that they used to visit for, I think was it like fishing? I'm sorry if I got that story wrong. But anyway, I guess like one night they hear like this creature. And keep in mind that the family that was there, they've gone hunting, fishing, they're outdoorsy people. And like in the middle of the night, they feel like this awful smell outside of this small cabin. And basically like the next day they go out and they see the prints. And again, the people that like were in this cabin, they know for the most part like animal prints, and they could not identify this. So I believe one of them believes it's like Bigfoot or something like that. Again, I could be completely wrong. Okay, I need to plug this in because my phone's about to die, and that's happened before where I've been on a live and then the live ends abruptly. So I'm sorry. I might have to end this because I don't have a charger, but yeah, you guys, some of you have been on with me when like my phone just died. I'm so sorry. But yeah, my phone's about to die. I'm at 4%, so I'm gonna end the live. So we'll have to continue this another night. But if you don't follow me and you like this stuff, please follow me for my lives if you want to. If not, that's chill. We'll probably see each other some other time. Cool. Have a good rest of your night. Bye, guys.